Ever wondered why the quietest people in old age seem to hold the deepest wisdom, as if their silence speaks louder than words? There comes a moment in life, often quietly and without any announcement, when noise loses its charm. The need to speak, argue, explain, or even impress starts to fade. It's not that the mind becomes empty. In fact, it becomes fuller, but fuller with understanding, with experience, with acceptance. Silence no longer feels like emptiness. It begins to feel like peace. In our younger years, silence often feels awkward. We rush to fill it. We talk endlessly, not always to express, but to escape the discomfort of stillness. We speak to be heard, to be validated, to feel important. But with age, life teaches something else. The endless noise, the constant opinions, the emotional roller coasters, they begin to feel heavy. And slowly, silence starts to look like a shelter, a soft, sacred space where the soul can finally rest. Old age is not just a number. It is a transition, a slow movement from doing to being, from proving to accepting, from speaking to listening. And in this sacred transition, silence becomes a guide. In silence, the old man remembers. He remembers not just events, but emotions, not just victories, but the lessons hidden behind failures. He sees how many arguments were pointless, how much energy was spent trying to change things that were never in his hands. And in that realization, he grows quieter, not from weakness, but from understanding. The world may not understand this silence. To others, it may look like distance, aloofness, or even sadness. But to the one who has truly entered it, silence is not a loneliness, it is solitude. A place where the heart breathes freely, the mind stops chasing, and the soul begins to speak. And what does the soul say? Nothing and everything. It tells the truth not in words, but in stillness. It teaches that not every truth needs to be spoken. The presence is more powerful than expression. That sometimes, sitting beside someone in silence can heal more than 1,000 words ever could. In old age, we start to see through the illusions. The illusion that more talking means better communication. That being loud means being strong. That being silent means being weak. Slowly, the truth begins to settle in. Silence is strength. Silence is wisdom. Silence is peace. The elderly man sitting by the window gazing into the sky may not say much, but within him lies the universe full of storms he survived, choices he made, regrets he buried, and love he once lost and found again. Every wrinkle on his face is a story, every breath is a prayer, and his silence is a song. We live in a time where everyone wants to be heard. Voices are louder than ever. Social media gives a microphone to every opinion, every mood, every fleeting thought. But in this noisy world, the silent elder stands out not because of what he says, but because of what he doesn't. He doesn't argue, he doesn't rush, he doesn't interrupt, because he knows time is precious. Words are precious, energy is precious, and peace is everything. His silence is not empty. It is full of compassion, full of forgiveness, full of quiet strength. It carries the weight of a life lived honestly, with joy and pain, with hope and heartbreak, with moments of clarity and years of confusion. Yet here he is, silent. And in that silence lies the power that no noise can match. Silence in old age is not a retreat. It is a return to the self, a return to the center of being where noise no longer defines worth, and attention is no longer a need, but a distraction. When a person is young, the mind is restless. The ego craves acknowledgement, admiration, validation. It wants to win debates, leave impressions, and be remembered. But as the years unfold and the hair turns silver, the hunger for noise weakens, and what remains is not emptiness, it is essence. The essence of who we are beneath all roles, all titles, all identities. The silence of the elderly is not always born from tiredness. Sometimes it is born from understanding that life does not need to be shouted into shape. That most of life's conflicts are not meant to be resolved by words, but by time, by grace, by letting go. In silence, the aged begin to hear something different. Not the voices of the world, but the whispers of their soul. They become listeners not just of others, but of life itself. They listen to the sound of rain with more attention. They notice how wind moves through trees. They pause before reacting. They feel before speaking. And often they realize nothing needs to be said, because truth, when deeply realized, becomes quiet. In the earlier stages of life, people often chase after happiness in noise and celebration, in events and conversations. But the ones who have lived long enough discover that peace is quieter, that true joy is calm. It's not in shouting with a crowd. It's in sipping tea alone at sunrise. It's in watching grandchildren laugh. It's in breathing without fear, loving without condition, and sitting without restlessness. There is power in a silence that has seen life. That power cannot be faked. It comes only when you've walked through storms and decided not to shout at the rain. When you've seen people come and go and chosen not to hold bitterness. When you've lost things you thought you could never live without and still continued to live softer than before. The silent elder is not cold. He is warm in ways that words cannot describe. His warmth is not loud, it is a quiet kindness, a knowing look, a patient smile, a gentle nod. He doesn't explain his silence because he doesn't need to. He knows that everyone learns at their own pace. He knows that pain is a teacher, that silence can be guidance, and that sometimes saying nothing allows others to hear themselves more clearly. To be in the presence of someone who is silent out of wisdom is to feel something sacred. It makes you slow down. It makes you reflect. It makes you feel safe, not because they are talking, but because they are not judging. Their silence gives permission for your own thoughts to breathe. And so old age becomes not just a time of slowing down, but of deepening. Not of fading away, but of becoming fuller, not with noise, but with meaning. Many elders do not speak much, not because they have nothing to say, but because they have realized that silence itself speaks volumes. And in a world where everyone is screaming to be heard, that silent presence becomes a rare and powerful gift. There is a sacred depth in the eyes of someone who has lived long enough to stop chasing answers. In their silence lives a knowing, not the kind that comes from books or theories, but the kind that grows only through time, pain, surrender, and love. The world often misinterprets silence, especially in older people. It is assumed to be sadness, loneliness, or even defeat. But those who truly observe closely will see there is a difference between silence that comes from sorrow and silence that comes from peace. One is heavy, the other is light. The silence of old age, when embraced, becomes light. This light doesn't shine loudly, it glows gently. It's the soft illumination that comes when a person has stopped fighting what they cannot control. It's the light that appears when the heart no longer holds grudges, and the mind has stopped demanding perfection from self, from others, from life. A younger person may seek silence through meditation, nature, or solitude, but the elder often finds it naturally. as if silence was always waiting at the door, and only now they have chosen to open it. And when they open it, they realize something profound. The world inside is richer than the world outside. The noise of life begins to feel distant. Arguments that once felt urgent now seem unnecessary. Victories that once brought pride now bring only a quiet smile. Failures that once caused pain now feel like important pages in the story. In this silence, forgiveness blooms. Forgiveness of self for the mistakes made, for the words that had angered, for the choices taken in confusion. Forgiveness of others for the hurt, for the misunderstandings, for not being who we wanted them to be. This forgiveness is not loud. It doesn't require a conversation. It is an internal shift, a soft release, a deep breath after years of holding on. The elder becomes free not by escaping the world, but by surrendering to its truths. Silence teaches them that not everything must be fixed, not everything must be explained, not everyone will understand, and that's okay. The need to be right, to win, to be heard, all of it melts away in the presence of stillness. They begin to enjoy their own company more than the noise of the crowd. They sit longer with nature, not to be entertained, but to feel connected. A leaf falling, a bird singing, the warmth of sunlight on their skin, these are not background moments anymore. These are the main events. In the silence of old age, there is an unspoken celebration, not of what was achieved, but of what was survived, not of what was gained, but of what was understood. And what is understood is this: peace doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. Less noise, less validation, less control. More stillness, more acceptance. More love quiet, unconditional love. And so the elder becomes a lighthouse. Not because they guide with loud instruction, but because their quiet presence itself becomes a guide. You feel it in the way they listen, the way they pause before speaking, the way they look at you, not as someone to judge, but as someone to understand. Their silence is not empty space. It's a space filled with the echoes of lessons life taught them. And in their presence, you don't feel the urge to impress. You feel the urge to breathe. That is the gift of their silence. There comes a time in life when the heart no longer wants to argue, not because it has given up, but because it has risen above. This quiet transformation doesn't arrive suddenly. It grows slowly, like dawn breaking after a long night. And when it comes, it brings with it a silence that doesn't feel like absence, but presence. In old age, this silence becomes a companion, not a void, not a punishment, but a deeply trusted friend. It walks beside the elder in the early morning when the world is still asleep. It sits with them by the window, where the sun gently spills over the earth. It lingers in their pauses, in their unspoken thoughts, in the simple way they smile at memories no one else sees. And in this companionship, something beautiful unfolds. The elder stops trying to explain life and begins to simply feel it. They no longer search for meaning in grand events, but in the tiny details, the rhythm of their breath, the stillness of the room, the warmth of holding their own hands. In this silence, they become the witness of their thoughts, of their emotions, of their past, and of the endless now. The stories they once told often, they now carry quietly. Not because they are forgotten, but because they are complete. There is a kind of reverence in this stage of life where one starts to protect silence like a sacred temple. The elder chooses words carefully, not out of fear, but out of respect for their weight. They know that every word spoken leaves an imprint, and so they speak less, but when they do, Their voice holds the strength of decades. And for those who are wise enough to listen, each sentence becomes a seed. Old age teaches us that not every question needs an answer, that not every wound needs to be reopened, that not every silence must be filled. It is a time when the soul no longer craves noise to feel alive. Instead, it thrives in peace. In silence, the elderly meet themselves again, not as the roles they played or the labels they wore, but as the pure awareness behind it all. The child within them returns, not with confusion, but with calm curiosity. They no longer resist life. They observe it, accept it, and bless it for all it gave and all it took. There is a kind of elegance in an old soul who has embraced silence. Their presence doesn't shout for attention, yet draws it effortlessly. You feel safe around them, not because they solve your problems, but because they make you feel seen without judgment, heard without interruption. They become the reminder that peace is possible not in escape, but in surrender. That you don't need to conquer the world to find meaning. Sometimes you just need to sit still long enough for life to speak to you. And life speaks in silence. The silence of old age is not an end. It is a new beginning. A beginning that invites us to dive deeper into ourselves, to uncover the quiet power that has been growing all along. It is the moment when the soul speaks louder than the noise of the world ever could. In this silence, there is no rush, no need to prove, to explain, or to defend. There is only presence, a calm, steady presence that holds the weight of a lifetime with grace. The elder knows that life's most profound truths are felt, not spoken. This sacred silence becomes a sanctuary, where the mind finds rest and the heart remembers its rhythm. It teaches us that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in words, but in the peaceful stillness between them. So when you see someone quiet in their later years, don't mistake their silence for emptiness or resignation. See it for what it truly is, a deep well of wisdom, compassion, and love. A quiet mind that has weathered storms and a powerful soul that continues to shine. If this message touched your heart and gave you a moment of peace, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Quiet Mind, Powerful Soul for more reflections that nurture your spirit and calm your mind. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are told in silence, and here we listen deeply.